I think many of us are so driven in, or just so focused on on our own selves, that we have forgotten that when we do things more in harmony with one another, working with one another, listening and holding space for each other, that we can accomplish a lot more. It's not about competition in this world. It really isn't.
Hello, welcome to the Forge podcast. My guest today is Birgitta Visser. Birgitta has so much to offer, it's really difficult to summarize. She's a soul empowerment coach, a light configurator, a Reiki master, an Egyptian shaman, a quantum touch healer, a fitness instructor, also a registered member of the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. She's a contributing author with Sabian Venberg to the book Becoming Empowered, Echoes of Grace and Strength, and the author of Becoming Authentically Me. Welcome, Birgitta, to the Forge.
Hey, Adam, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I have both your books here. I want the audience to know. You had sent me a PDF version of your part. I didn't realize that in context until the book showed up. Now it makes perfect sense. I was like, man, that's really interesting, but it felt like it was a part of something else. And you probably explained that along the way, but it was wonderful to receive your book. And then also this one,
Yep.
Becoming Authentically Me.
Ooh, the hard copy.
There's so much here. I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll get these books and I'll review them and we'll put together a little agenda. And no, there's just way too much there.
Yeah.
Way too much experience, way too much depth, and just extremely well written, well communicated about just a huge myriad and a huge wealth of wisdom there. So thank you for writing both of those books. And I'm very much looking forward to your next production. But to start off I'd like to start by just getting a better idea, a kind of a more well-rounded idea of where you're coming from. This is very unique in our series of podcasts here at The Forge. So I want to make sure that the people listening understand that who you are, where you're coming from, and kind of why you're here today.
Where I'm coming from, somewhere amongst the stars. Why am I here? What do you mean? Why am I here on this earth plane?
Well, both. But I mean, that's a big question. I don't know if we have time to answer that fully, but just an idea, really. You and I kind of met through Podmatch, and you kind of had an interest. And I mean, honestly, we don't get a lot of interest from female spiritualists, such as certainly with the background that you have. And so, number one, I was honored to have your attention and interest. But also, what I really want is the people that listen to our show, our audience here today, to kind of get an understanding of what the motivation was behind that.
Yeah, I do remember emailing you and discussing the yin and yang aspect, the feminine and the masculine. Yeah. And the masculine is more the go, the do, and action-based, whereas the feminine is all about nurturing and spirituality. And many people either have, how do I put this? A lot of the men have the more masculine and are lacking the feminine. And it's always good to have that in balance. And there's nothing woo-woo about spirituality and that nurturing, because we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And I always say with human, you split the word in two. You get I always call that light, and then men. And we're walking light men, wandering the earth, returning to that love for ourselves and each other, because we've lost that love for ourselves.
Interesting. We touch on things, subjects that are similar to that in our work with men, but this is something different. And I think it'll make a very powerful connection with the men that we work with when they understand that this kind of thing, number one, is okay. Like, you're not sacrificing your masculinity by listening, by learning, and by practicing anything that you and I are going to talk about today.
Yep.
And in fact, it's the opposite, truly. Just to be able to, in the beginning, it's vulnerable, right? Which, of course, is another version of another symptom of humility and an expression of strength.
Yes.
But also, to the degree that you can connect deeper, with women, with the feminine, but also other men as well, even in real time when we're in our group settings. And I
Yeah.
think that's a powerful lesson that somebody can take away, that anybody listening to this, male or female, but certainly our male audience can take away from our conversation today.
Do you know, it's funny because I mean, yes, I'm a female, but I used to be far more in my masculine energy, always go, 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 on the go, doing too many things and just taking care of me and, even, my family, but, as in my mom. But, and I've had to incorporate that spirituality because, I burned myself to a crisp, heaven knows how many times.
Yeah.
And I really had to learn to get in touch with myself because we often just deviate away from our awareness. And I call that really playing, Houdini with our emotions.
In your work, do you work with many men? Is that a portion of the people that you generally work with? Is it a minority, a majority? What's your
Minority,
exposure to?
minority, and
Yeah.
it's really such a shame. It really is a shame. And I know, Adam, I know many people are awakening, so to speak, and
Mhm.
they're going through a lot of suffering right now, a lot of pain. They're struggling, and it's almost like their back is against the wall. And it's really the universe telling them, look, you need to heal, you need to get in touch with your spiritual side, the truth of who you are, not who you believe yourself to be. And so many people are confronted because the earth is shifting, it's ascending, because the earth is a living, breathing being, just like we are. It has a chakra system. It is alive, it's consciousness, just like we are consciousness. And I always say we're all one. That means we're one with everything, including the earth.
What does that look like in terms of the human experience when the earth itself shifts?
Oh, it's called the new golden age. That's what I call it. And what it looks like, it's not pretty. It's absolutely not pretty. But we have to walk through the darkness in order to return back to the light of ourselves. Every single person has to walk through that darkness, and not everyone is going to understand. But it's all about releasing our pain. I call it the pent up hurt that we keep locked in the archives of our minds because many of us do not alchemize our experiences. We don't heal from them because we just don't know how. We're so conditioned to live a certain way. We're so programmed in this, what I call the matrix or this societal paradigm, that we don't know any other way to live. We live from the outside in rather than from the inside out.
So this awakening that you're talking about, these are cyclical. They happen periodically, or maybe not periodically, throughout history. Is that true?
Yes, it has happened throughout history. I mean, there's so many civilizations that were far more advanced than we are today. I sometimes call it a bit of like the dinosaur age. I mean, we can look at Lemuria, we can look at Atlantis, even Babylonian times, brilliant civilizations.
When you say they were in advance of contemporary civilization, what do you mean specifically? Like
Ah,
technologically,
oh,
spiritually?
technologically speaking, they lived from the heart space, but then there's always this thing with the ego that's crept in. And, every time we just have to keep learning.
It's interesting that you brought up ego.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times when men don't engage spiritualism, when they resist it, when they push back against it, or just flat out refuse to engage it at all, a lot of times we contribute that to ego. And is that the case sometimes? Yeah. But there's another thing that happens. And one of the things that I found, and I wrote you about this, but it really just, if I'm being honest, just pissed me off. Like I kept running into it over and over and over. And I didn't know why it made me angry. But I think the example I used in talking with you is like our ayahuasca
Yeah.
experience. The integration, the integrative part of that, when everybody got together, I didn't, part of it because I was a little bit out of my mind because of what had happened, but also like all I heard was I, me. And from that moment, I kind of became aware of how much of that I had heard. And I was like, why does that drive me nuts? Like, And again, I wasn't myself immune from that. You're having a very personal experience, but I felt like so much of that work, we didn't hear about things uh, that are contributable, right? Those very, very introspective, very, very self-focused. And when I was trying to write this agenda, I tried to write this thing like 5 times, and I just kept writing stuff that was I'm like, this isn't authentic at all. It's just irritated. I just get angry, smoke the whole file. Like, I don't even want to try to fix this. It's a disaster, because I knew I had an opportunity in talking to you today, and that opportunity would be best served if I could be as authentic as possible. So I said, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk. And I got up Sunday morning and I was like, that irritates me. Why? Like, what is it about that? It feels in some of those cases like it was very narcissistic, and I didn't want to be narcissistic. I'm not saying it was, but as I started to just put words into on the paper, I realized, there's a part of masculinity, and I think most people are aware of this, that wants to serve. That does not mean every man lives to serve, but I mean, as a part, as a pillar, as a principle of masculinity, whether it's men or women, whatever part, that's the contributable part, like protecting and providing, or ways of contributing to the greater good of society.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to think about that, and it kind of like led a little bit to this revelation in my mind, like that made sense. That was a little bit irritating. And then I went a step further in my own practices inside my company and working with other men, and said, it makes sense that they would resist it. Now, back to the word ego, is that part of it? I'm not excusing that in any way. That is part of it, I think, a lot of the times. But I think it's important for men to understand that that's part of this too. Even if that's not the part you hear, even if that's not the part you see necessarily, largely because of how few men engage this practice, but that there absolutely is this massive contributable part of spiritualism, even though it's so self-focused and so introspective. And I just wonder, like, what we can say today, you and I talking with your incredible experience and wisdom in the subject, to men to try to make that barrier of entry not seem so high, because it truly isn't. And that the truth is, when you do this kind of work, it actually makes you more able, it gives you a more, how do I say it? You're better able to contribute, because you just have a much better understanding of yourself, and you're able to contribute in a far more authentic way.
Yes. I think many of us are so driven in, or just so focused on on our own selves, that we have forgotten that when we do things more in harmony with one another, working with one another, listening and holding space for each other, that we can accomplish a lot more. It's not about competition in this world. It really isn't. And I think that is, oh my gosh. And that is not just for men, it's women as well. We are not in competition with one another. That's the ego,
Yeah.
being very boisterous. I am better than you. And this is how I feel about this. No, nobody is right or wrong. Just listen to one another and then speak.
Interesting, because we talk about that, and one of the ways, there's so much, and I don't want to go too far down on a tangent, but
Okay.
I love that very, very much, because one of our key elements in the work that we do is getting people to literally incorporate as a principle in their life that they will listen with respect and gratitude.
Yes.
And we talk about that as, again, it's always in a masculine context, so it isn't to exclude the feminine. That's just what we do. That's our work and the focus of it.
Yeah.
But what a leadership role that is when you can master it. And we've taken men through that. Men who come in completely buried in ego, to the effect that when they are listening, they're listening for an opportunity to create the opposing viewpoint, right? Because conflict, serving the ego, does something else, right? It also can give us, falsely so, I agree, but it gives us a sense of purpose, right? Like, if I'm against something, I'm a purpose. And if the other guy's against the same thing, well, now we've got a team of people who are in opposition. And that's really, it's a bond of egos. And the destructive nature of that is hard to really, to even measure, right?
Yeah, and I especially see it in the corporate world where I live in. It doesn't align with me anymore, but for now, I need it until I transition out. And I see this constant competition between companies and between people. And I'm like, why? Honestly, if we learn to listen and hold space, as I said, for each other, we could achieve so much more.
Yeah, and I understand that on the corporate side. I've promoted that as an owner of a good sized commercial construction company. Like that's pure ego. Like you
Yes.
see, where you see ego, you see dollars.
Yeah.
Um, I know, and I'm only going to speak to America because I'm an American. Okay, I don't speak about other countries because I don't have citizenship there, and I haven't spent enough time elsewhere. But that is deteriorating our society at such a rate, and it's a compounding velocity. We have such this mentality that and social media is like the greatest example I'm aware of, where somebody draws a line and therefore you create division and camaraderie at the same time, both based on this egoic ideology, camaraderie in the tribalistic or the tribalism that's created there,
Yes.
and then opposition when you draw that line, and you immediately lose half of your audience. And what's so amazing to me is it seems like every subject in American culture, and maybe it's this way around the world, is exactly 50-50. You can't look at these polls and statistics and all these things and say there isn't something more at work here, because how could it possibly be that we're always right down the middle? Like the least solvable statistical circumstance is what we find on every single subject in American culture. And I don't know your experience. You've lived all over the place. You're far more
Yes.
cultured than I. Maybe that's the same all around the world.
Well, it is. But remember, when we talk about social media, when we talk about the media, everything is just an illusion. Everything that's being fed by the media is an illusion
Mm.
to keep people entranced. I mean, we know television, it tells a vision. Yeah, this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
And that's what it does because it programs it. Same with all the other technology.
Yeah.
Everything has been created to program us. And then people go, well, this is happening in the world, and why is this happening? And people protest, and it's just
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, so much of it is an illusion, and it's all to deviate us from our awareness. That's why it's been created. I mean, it's a brilliant strategy, but it's been done on different planets in the past. And it's like, why do people get fueled by that? But that's exactly the point. And we are all the same. The light within us is the same. We may have a different appearance, physical appearance, but we are the same. And all these borders have been created to divide us even more. Everything has been created to divide us. Oh my goodness. And they're doing a brilliant job. Um,
Mhm.
but
Very effective.
eventually it will falter, and they will be getting the Raspberry Award. There you go. You failed.
Yep. That's interesting. We keep it simpler than that. I refer to that as really that our creator left us with a thread of benevolence, and that's how we define the connection. And we do it that way because my argument when I'm opposed is simply we have to be at least 51% love or we wouldn't be here. The fact that we're standing here talking tells me that through the evolution of man from creation till today, there has to at least be that 1% to the positive of a positive intent, and that has to come from love. And
Yes.
so many of the subjects you're describing in opposition to that, um, we just put them all in one big box called convenience, and
Yep.
that's the allure. It's
Mhm.
convenient to watch Netflix and not engage your family. You won't find a television in this house
I don't have
uh,
one.
because there's no reason for it. I mean, we have screens, right? We have a green room. It's super nice. When people come in studio, they can hang out, and we put our agenda up on the board, and we try to make things very comfortable. We put photographs of them and their family so they feel like they're super, super at home to the extent that is possible. But that's not a television, right? There's no Channel 7 news here because of that, because the convenience and how alluring that is.
Yeah. And that's how you pump fear into people, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's take that and run if that's okay with you.
Hmm.
We talk about instilling fear.
Yeah.
There's a reaction when you witness fear, whether it's on television or social media. It doesn't matter. It comes into your life, broadcast on some medium. Somebody who engages some of the practices that you teach How is that experience different for them? Like what would be something that would impact our day-to-day life if we were to choose to really engage some of the things that you are a master of and that you talk about in that same experience when that person comes home and turns on the television and sees something like that?
Throw out the TV. That's right.
Amen.
But fear. Let's just talk about fear. So fear means false evidence appearing real, but as I always say, it also means either falling endlessly or arising revolutionary. Everything is up here in the mind. That's where fear is instilled. Yeah, it's an illusion. Absolutely an illusion. And I like you, I don't have a TV. I used to watch it and I was thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And now I live in my own world because the truth is, what you feed your mind is exactly what will bleed into your environment. And here's the other thing, people always look for a savior outside of themselves. Like they look towards, governance, for instance, or in your case, like a president. I mean, that's not going to happen. If you want to make the world a better place, start with yourself. Yeah, because when you start with yourself, that's how I call it. You will inspire other people. That spark will spark another spark, and so forth. It's really about following our passions and learning to overcome the hurdles within our own mind and return to that love for ourselves. And I always say it's hugging it out with ourselves and surrendering to that pain and understanding that there is more to life, but also understanding that when we heal certain experiences, that our energy also changes. Yeah, because we are energy. We're
Mm.
not just this body. We are the battery, the soul within this body that gives it life.
So,
I went a bit on a tangent there. Sorry.
no, please, the tangent resonates with me incredibly. It's just literally what I wanted everybody to hear. It's just perfect. And let me give you an example. You've suffered tremendous trauma. I mean, when you read through your books, like there's a lot there, a lot. So the point I want to illuminate is for somebody who has been through the things that you've been through, relationships, losing family members, drugs, all that stuff.
Mhm.
You're no stranger to having to heal and no stranger to suffering and having to find your way through it. Do you believe that in for every situation you've been in and perhaps situations other people have been in that are similar, we have that ability on board, pre-installed
Yeah.
in us to survive and to heal that from those wounds?
Yes, I'm a big believer in that. And of course, for me, it was I mean, trust me, I'm still evolving. But yes, I have been through a lot of trauma, but I look back on it. And when you're right in the middle of it, it's difficult. But I look back on it, and I just want to say to people out there, just be grateful for these characters, these people that have been a part of your life. Yeah, they were meant to come on your path to trigger you so that you would learn something from them. And what happens a lot of the time, Adam, is that we will go, why are you saying that? No, you're not right. And we start to argue rather than thinking, hey, you know what? Why are you triggering me? What is this teaching me? And it's not, why is this happening to me? It's rather thinking, why is this actually happening for me? And then when you start to think about it, just be grateful for that experience.
It's such a beautiful way to describe what can happen, what the potential and the outcome is when we look inside. And
Yes.
to contrast that, when we look peripherally beyond the existential into the world for solutions, I say all the time, there's no peripheral solutions for existential problems. But when we looked at, the world has become so sharpened at presenting us when we're seeking, first of all, knowing that we're looking. right? Also setting the precedence for us to go look for an outside peripheral solution. And then what is standing there? McDonald's and statin drugs and all these conveniences and alcohol and drugs and all the and terrible things that we get ourselves into, because when we're looking peripherally to these existential problems for solutions, and the world presents us with these conveniences that have terrible consequence.
Yep.
And I just wonder, an easy way to put it as an example is like, you know, you're sitting on your ass watching your television, making sure you're afraid of everything, eating Doritos, not going to the gym, you know, not being active the way that you could be. And then your cholesterol goes up, big surprise. And so the
Mhm.
doctor gives you a statin drug. And then a couple of years later, your hands quit working because of the side effects from the statin drugs. The other way of doing that is get off your ass. Eat a salad, put down the Doritos, go to the gym, go outside, take your kids, play catch. I mean, anything, doesn't matter. Just
Yeah.
go do something, and then you avoid that. What I'm wondering, and I hope this is fair to ask you, that's a physical, very easy example to understand. What is a scenario similar to that where instead of going out, like my example, we're talking about the material world.
Yeah.
What is an example of doing the same thing spiritually?
That, I mean, spiritually awakening, gosh, I mean, that's like uncovering layers and layers of pain and hurt, and believing who believing the persona that you have created, because that's an identity that you've created, a character, and unlearning everything that you have learned. Yeah,
Mhm.
spiritually nourishing means doing something different every single day. Like for me, for instance, for me, it's like meditation, and just rather than reacting, for me, it's just thinking and reflecting before I say something.
Mhm.
But gosh, I what else? Spiritually nourishing. I don't care if you go to the gym or you go for a run or you go biking or you do something completely different. As I said, make a bucket list.
No,
That really, really works.
no,
Make a vision board if you believe in that. Manifesting is so important. When we want to achieve something, when we inspire to create something, it's manifesting. Manifesting is when we visualize it as already having it, and then taking the steps, because we are energy, rather than chasing it, saying I will be, I want to, because that's kicking that can down the road.
mm,
Grounding ourselves, very, very important. And people are like, wait, what do you mean grounding myself? Does that mean I just have to step with my feet into the onto the earth? No, but it also means like changing your lifestyle. Yeah. What are you putting into your body? My father always used to say, your body is a temple, treat it as such.
no,
Yeah. How much junk do we put in our system? Yeah. And we create so much dis-ease within ourselves. And that's not just because of the foods that we consume, but it's also what we allow within our energy fields, what we ingest into our minds, and
no,
what we hold on to. Once you've been through experiences, and you know, we're like an onion. Every time we peel back a layer, we cry, and then it's like, okay, you know, how do I change from this? What do I need to do? And then there's another layer, and so forth. But every time we go through something, rather than playing that victim, or you know, we think about it, it's like, oh, okay, I understand why this is happening, and you can get over it faster, rather than it taking years.
no.
Yeah, because you understand the cogwheels of life, and you're just starting to understand a lot more.
No, and that's, I mean, isn't that a beautiful part of life when it progresses that way?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and it's okay to change. You got to step outside of that to experience that, but it's well rewarded, I think, in our lives. We're always rewarded for taking risks where risk serves us, right? We're not taking risks out of
Yes.
greed or whatever like that, but when we do that, and that is like literally the perfect segue, because I do not want to leave our time together today without talking about light language.
Oh, yes.
And I'm super excited about this, and I've got to. um, there's some people listening to this are going to be like, there's no way. And this is for the people who are thinking that as we talk through this. And guys, I'm going to warn you. I made sure I made a note of this. I know the majority of men how they respond to this. I remember the way I used to respond to this particular subject, and it's cringy, right? Guys are like, oh man, I'm not going to do that. It's like buying a pink car. What am I going to do with a pink car, right?
Love that.
Not to reduce it, but seriously. But this is a great practice in letting go. And to the gentlemen listening to this and the women who find it cringy as well, please let that go. Listen to the things you learn here in our few moments that we have left in our podcast today, talking about this, because really it can change your life. Never knew anything about light language. I think we were in Sedona maybe talking to a Hopi elder, my wife and I, where it was mentioned. And she mentions this thing about light language. This was years ago. And my wife's like, yeah, I've done that. And I'm like, what? You've done that? What does that even mean? Like, I have to have this conversation right now because I'm freaking out. I don't even know what we're talking about, right? And my wife, to her credit, of course, being as strong as she is, was like, okay, Adam, we're going to walk through this, right? Like, it's not weird. It's not, something terrible. Anyway, and got to the point where we've practiced that together. And I want to be clear when I say together, I can't do it, but what I say is I receive it because she can. And it's like a prayer for us together, but a prayer over me where that light language comes through her. Yeah. And man, I remember her saying she wanted to try it together, and like cold sweats in my feet. It's like looking over the edge of the Grand Canyon, right? And your whole body's just like, no, we can't do this. But like so many ways, I trust that road and went down it. And first of all, instantaneously, you feel comfortable because of the energy that brings in. And Birgitta, I'm sure I'm butchering this on some level. I'm just speaking from my own ignorant observation. But it just really was amazing. And to put a point on my own experience, the level of intimacy and connection that comes when you're in a practice like that, at least to the degree I've been, is amazing. And guys, you want a lesson in vulnerability? Do this. You want to show her how strong you are? Do this. Because her perception of you receiving this or even engaging the practice together is not what you think it is. I will promise you that. Instead, it's probably to the contrary of what most are thinking right now, and is an amazing example of strength and trust between two people. But I know that a lot of your work. I know there's so many other modalities that you involve in, so I don't want to reduce your work to this one thing. But it's
I love doing it. Love doing it. I'm always very, very humbled.
So anything you can share with us, like how it works, why it works, the difference between this and some of the other practices and modalities that are available to people, would just be wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm happy to give a demo in a minute. For me, I love light language. I'm very humbled to be able to do this. And I always say this, Adam, I'm just a tool in the toolbox. And we are either our own greatest healers because we have the potential within, or our greatest destroyers, as I always say. But light language on a conscience level, you will not understand it. But on a soul level, these codes just get absorbed by your soul. And I call it like it's the cosmic language of love. That is what it is. And it dissolves so much within our energy field. But we still have to do the work. So when we have modalities like Reiki is like hands-on healing, which is very, very different. It works more on a physical level. For me, it's always worked more on a physical level. And I would feel fine afterwards. But what I realized is that I would still slip back. I've always called it sort of a Band-Aid healing. But that is my perception of it. And even though I am a Reiki master, and it served me well at the time and to those that I taught it to, then there is EFT, the emotional freedom technique. Super simple, super powerful. It's a tapping where you tap the emotions out of a traumatic experience and you heal that. And then you can just talk about it without any emotion because that is gone. Very, very profound.
Is that one of? I mean, there's a lot of benefits to this practice, I know, but connection to other people, is that a legitimate benefit? Is that something that most people would experience?
What with light language?
Yes.
So when I'm on Zoom or face to face, it's I will do a short meditation just to get the breathing going, proper breathing, because
Mhm.
we only breathe to here rather than all the way down to the root chakra. And that's a very interesting point because we shallow breathe. When we shallow breathe, we live very much on the surface of ourselves. When we deep breathe, yeah, we we dive deeper into our own being.
Mhm.
So I start with that, and then I will start with the light. I explain it to them and start with the light language, and then if I get messages through, I will just tell them. And sometimes face to face, I will use my alchemy and my cosmic singing bowls. For me, I suffered from a bad knee, left knee, and when I went to a healer and it was done via Zoom, boom, it was gone.
Mhm.
That's how powerful it can be, but you have to be open to it and just
Yeah.
be receptive to that healing, and don't put any expectations on it. That's what I always say, because if you do put an expectation on it, then you cap it, you cap the flow of the energy. But yeah, it has tremendous benefits on a physical level, emotional, spiritual, so to speak.
So what drives most people to do light language, to have a session with you? What are they looking for? What are they up against?
It's all different. So with some people, I've had someone who had relationship issues, and it was releasing old hurt. She's actually now getting married, funnily enough.
Mhm.
I have had someone that had issues with walking, and she could only walk for 5 minutes before she couldn't do it anymore.
Mhm.
She's fine now. She can just walk, take the dog for a walk. I've had somebody she needed to go into hospital, and she had such a fear of going in for surgery. And the next day she went in, and she's like, and she didn't even realize it was just gone. And then when I spoke to her 2 weeks later, she's like, oh my gosh, I just went in and I had no fear. It was done. And I went home after that. So it's really, really different. But again, Adam, it's mostly women. And I wish that more men would reach out because they would benefit so much from it.
Why do you think more men don't?
I think it's because they, yeah, they're not in touch with their feminine side.
Oh, that's
And do you
what
know
we
what's so beautiful? Do you know what there is? Honestly, men, it's like whatever you're going through, do not internalize it. Just reach out. I salute you. I applaud you if you reach out to someone. I don't care what type of healing you go for.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. It has to align with your spirit, but do not stay there and sit within that fear, that anger, that bitterness, whatever you're feeling, let it out. It's okay to cry. It's honestly cleansing for the soul. Put that ego aside and
Yeah.
allow for your soul to shine forth. Stop stop playing a riddler with your mind. That's how my guides put it.
Mm.
And just allow for yourself to breathe. Stop being so uptight within yourself and allow for yourself to come alive, to be alive, rather than being lived within this rigid grid of existence.
Yeah. Well, what I think creates that rigidity is just it's fear. It's being afraid.
Absolutely, it is fear.
Well, and that's what's so interesting too about a lot of different expansive experiences, right? Spiritual or otherwise, even physical, is we have a fear. We approach the fear, like you said. It's usually false. And we get through to the other side. And what do we find there? What we find is strength. We
Yes,
find a new resource. We find a new content, or we let go of something that was holding
yes.
us back that we're now free from. And all the really, if you ask me, this is how I put it, is God asked for is the faith to take that step.
Yes.
And he asked for that because that's the scary part. Once you take that step, what's on the other side is it's just always benevolence. Right? You're afraid to be vulnerable. You're afraid to try something new. You're afraid that something's going to come out you don't want to come out. Fear, 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 fear. I have these fear too. I don't have this figured out, man, at all. But he does a really good job. It's like, no, I need you to trust me, and I trust her. And that's where so much of that comes for me, because I think in the end, fear is the great contractor, while love is the great expander. And if you just
Yes.
really look through that lens, and that, as logical as that is, it's not it's true. And so when we have this fear, it's always something restricting us, holding us back, shrinking our world. Whereas if we can take that one step, and that's all that's ever asked, is you just have to take that first step, and then immediately in the first 30 seconds usually, that step is taken and things start to expand, and all of a sudden you come
Yes.
out the other side, you're like, to put it in a masculine perspective, I'm stronger than when I went into this. Not egoically stronger, not like, oh, I just, I can go pick something up that's heavier, but I'm a stronger person. I can do the things that I want to do. I can express the benevolence and love that I want to express more boldly now than I could before I took this one single practice, which really was only restricted by that very first step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you also said, being vulnerable. It's just, it's such an important aspect. It's just allowing everything to flow within your life and surrendering to whatever you're feeling. Yeah, life is still beautiful. Oh, by the way, did you want me to do a quick light language demo then
I
for
was literally just
everyone?
formulating how to ask you that in my head and make sure that I wasn't going to ask you to do
Okay,
something. Yes, absolutely, please.
before we forget.
I wasn't going to forget. I've got it written down right here. In fact, as
Yeah.
we
So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes
okay.
and just take a very deep breath in. Hold it and gently let that go. Now, for those who have never experienced light language before, just be open and receptive to it and just allow the sound of my voice. Well, it's the sound of my voice, but just allow for the light codes to be absorbed within your whole being. Yeah, so gently keep breathing in and out as I bring through the light codes. Takanusia manu wehetu kuya nahi nikia samu weheti awahai tunia nukua tisikanu ka ukia naka wehe miyasu ahai nikiki aluehea toshini mala tiki a kuala mukinithi aluasiki kuni wahaya mahu wahewa a. It's almost like they're saying, put yourself in the flow of water, being in the flow of your inner being. So seke ni alohe ma wehe pai tini o siki amanu wehe po inisi o a kuea. Tani asuku malai o tikia mahaini wehe o ai wa hesiki amauia a. Toe niki ama ui asalo e he ama hui o haku ni awa a. And letting go. They're also, because I have the Star Walker people right here. It's like they will sage you. That's how they're putting it. Saging your energy field. Kanu eseki amalo wahe nu wahe niki o mahai nu wahe waha wahe ki asamanu wahiti waka. Tuni aka wahe wasi mi aku ushini mi iya wa a. Remember, you are deserving of better. Allow yourself to let go. Set yourself free from the restraints you have so bound yourself with. Is it serving you? Mm-mm. It is not. Tokitiki ama nasu, nasuki esi ama oshiki ama o. Ta nuele amuni asa. Teka wahetu liini almuki apokati amalasiki awu u. Toti amanuki awahaini osu ya a. And also just as I see on the left side, you're just working on the voice box as well. That means communication. Tuki niki amaloa heti kawe esi. Toshimini awaka. Wakasiki amaku iniki apakaniki tuku. Taki asiki ama u. Mani awahasiki ama a. And also just as a final thing, just feel that light flowing down your spine. Sukiya, sikiyama a, niki iiyamaka sukiyama a. And just be open and allow for your heart to open gently like a lotus flower. Tushikia makukia, kukia nakatukia takasikia malawakia maku. Tasia makushima nahisikia maku takiama. And I just say thank you. And whenever you're ready, Adam, you can open your eyes.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Yes.
Very, very perfect.
Everyone does light language differently.
Yeah.
And that's so beautiful. That's
Yeah.
just, it's beautiful.
Birgitta, I'm so honored to have your time today. I'm so grateful. And I'm just truly, truly in wonder for the work that you do, the way that you do it, the way you put your information out, the way you're contributing to the entire human family. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.